Be ready. 5 seconds. Start. The present suit has been filed by the plaintiff against his co-bhumidars who he has arrayed as defendants number 226. By the present suit, the plaintiff is seeking to restrain the said defendants from selling the suit property to the defendant number 1 or to any other person. The suit relates to agricultural land measuring 17 bighas and 12 biswas situated in Khasra numbers 20 and 21 of the revenue estate of village Samastpur Khalsa, New Delhi 110073, hereinafter referred to as the suit property. According to the plaintiff, he and defendants number 226 are in joint possession of the suit property and are co-bhumidars along with one Mr. Suraj Kumar. It is pleaded in the plaint that the defendants number 226 are trying to sell the suit property to the defendant number 1 without the permission and consent of the plaintiff. According to the plaintiff, no partition has taken place in the suit property and therefore the suit property cannot be sold to any person without his consent. The plaintiff has prayed for a decree of permanent injunction restraining the defendants number 226 and their representatives from selling, alienating, mortgaging, partying with the possession, gifting, letting or transferring the suit property in any manner whatsoever to the defendant number 1 or to any other person and from creating third party interest in the suit property. Written statement was filed on behalf of the defendants. Defendant number 1 stated in his written statement that the suit is barred by section 41H of the Specific Relief Act 1963 in view of the existence of the alternative remedy of filing a suit for partition before the revenue assistant under the Delhi Land Reforms Act. It is also stated that the intended sale is permitted by section 44 of the Transfer of Property Act. It is further stated that the defendants number 226 are trying to sell only their respective shares which would not affect the share of the plaintiff in the property. Defendant number 1 averred in its written statement that in case the transfer of land is prohibited by the Delhi Land Reforms Act, permission no objection certificate would be granted for the transfer of the revenue authority. The defendant number 1 stated that it is the revenue authority which alone is competent to examine whether the intended transfer is in accordance with the provisions of Delhi Land Reforms Act. It is further stated that the plaintiff has not filed any suit under section 55 of the Delhi Land Reforms Act and therefore the provisions of section 59 of the Delhi Land Reforms Act do not apply to the case. They further stated that earlier the plaintiff had also agreed to sell the land but later reside at the time of execution of agreement to sell. The defendant number 1 also asserted that permission of the plaintiff is not required for sale of the shares of defendants number 2 to 6 in the suit property. The defendants number 2 to 6 have filed a common written statement in which they have stated that the suit is not maintainable since the plaintiff has not sought partition of the suit property. They have further stated that the suit is barred by Section 185 of the Delhi Land Reforms Act. It was further stated that the plaintiff is claiming more than the share which he is entitled to. Further, the defendants averred that the transfer of the property is in accordance with Section 31 of the Delhi Land Reforms Act and is not prohibited by Section 33 of the said Act. They further stated that in as much as a co-bhumidar, Mr. Suraj, has not been joined in the suit is not maintainable. On merits, the defendants number 2 to 6 stated that they do not require the permission of the plaintiff to sell the suit property. They also stated that the plaintiff ought to have filed a suit for partition before the revenue assistant and having failed to do so, he cannot indirectly obtain the said relief from the court. During arguments, all the parties submitted that it is not in dispute that the plaintiff and defendants number 2 to 6 are co-bhumidars in the suit property. Parties also submitted that defendants number 2 to 6 are proposing to sell their share in the suit property without the permission of the plaintiff. While the plaintiff submits that such action is not permitted by law, defendants number 2 to 6 have asserted their right to do so.